Thanks for the download today. I'm Brandon Laws, your host of Transform Your Workplace. On today's episode, I'm talking with James Lawrence, founder and CEO of Happy, a platform that's all about bringing personalized coaching to people at every level of your organization. We're digging into how AI can create a more connected, collaborative culture and why democratizing coaching matters for leaders, managers, and every employee in between. This show is sponsored by Xenium HR. Xenium's helping organizations get ready for 2025 with their leadership and development programs that's really making a difference in elevating their capabilities and up-leveling their skills. If you haven't already, be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Brandon Laws or links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. We've got over 500 episodes that you can go back to. All are going to help you transform your workplace in a positive way. All right, let's dive into the conversation with James Lawrence, the founder of Happy. James, thanks for coming on the podcast. It's good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Brandon. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. For listeners, we literally just talked for 40 minutes before the podcast started. We should have been recording the whole time, but we're going to dive in. We've got a lot to talk about. It's like perfect timing because I'm talking about AI with my coworkers, my friends. I even helped my kid with his math homework the other day using AI. So it's just everywhere in our lives. I'm sure you're having the same conversations. You've built a company that's around AI as well. It's AI powered and it's in the development space for employees. So how are you seeing the maybe positive change of having these tools now with AI power helping employee development? Like, where do you see it going?
Well, I think, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, Brandon. And, I think early on, there was a lot of talk about like AI is going to take my job. And I'm not saying that's not a thing either, but there's a beauty to these tools that you can use them to enhance your career. You can use them to make your life easier. Things that, if your work was 20% creative and then it was 80%, and there was an 80% load that had nothing to do with creativity, you're able to, in a lot of ways, a lot of AI tools are able to be used so that you can spend more time being creative at work. That part doesn't get talked about as much, I think. But, Happy's a little bit less, obviously not a creativity tool, but I think AI can bring a lot of things to, I would say your regular individual contributor all the way up to the CEO of the company.
I think there's a lot of fear around AI in some way. I think there's excitement and there's fear. I live in both camps as well. I think I'm excited about the possibilities. I use it in my daily work and I use it at home in some cases when I just need some extra creativity or a starting point. The scary parts of it to me are, where's my data going? How is it being trained on it? I actually just toggled off my LinkedIn. They hid in a little thing that says it's by default turned on to train on your data unless you turn it off. So I think people are a little anxious about how invasive it can be into their personal data in this space when it's coming to like effectively coaching you, your skills, your capabilities inside work. It's plugged into a lot of these tools. Maybe talk about how that works and share why we shouldn't be fearful about it, perhaps.
Yeah, let me start with just a quick overview of just kind of what Happy does. So really the underlying technology provides personalized coaching to all the employees in an organization. And so when I say personalized, that means that it comes through Microsoft Teams, Slack, email, Zoom. The tools you use every day become coaching tools where you can get insights on your coworkers, you can get insights on your manager can get insights and coaching on the employees that they manage. And so that's kind of the underlying concept behind Happy, is that we're providing these coaching tools in the flow of work. And so I'll get to the AI part in a sec, because that's an important part. But I like talking about like, what does it get you over what you had before? And I think the main thing is it's the democratization of coaching is really what it comes down to, which is, in most organizations, and I know you were telling me, before we started the podcast that you guys have about 100 employees in your company. Well, in most organizations, like it's only the leadership team maybe that would get access to a human coach. And we think human coaching is great, but they're not the only ones that want to get coaching, right? It's not just the leadership team should get coaching. There are a lot of employees inside the organization that want more coaching, and the managers don't have time to do the coaching. And that's actually what Gallup's data says. And so the problem we're solving is just really being able to bring more coaching that's more accessible to people. And so whether it's
at scale.
Yeah, at scale, whether and then it's doing it, at scale. And so what ends up happening is, and I think this is the scary part, is you start wondering like, oh my gosh, like even my wife. So my wife started working at our company. And at one point, my wife, Melissa, she's like, did you feed something into Happy? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I think we got into a fight that morning, something. She's like, it just gave me like a tip on how to like improve my relationship with you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, shh, but no, like, she started getting worried, like, is Happy in my oatmeal, like got a little like camera, like, but no, I mean, it's a good question. I think, you've got to really pay some attention to how you're handling people's data. And so Happy treats people's data with a lot of respect. And so we're not reading your Slack messages. We're not reading your emails. The thing Happy is most interested in is understanding who you're interacting with and the type of coaching you're accessing. So we're kind of down in the weeds, but I think, employees have a valid reason to like ask questions about what's being monitored. In Happy's case, we want to have a very transparent relationship with all of our companies and the people that use Happy. And so believe it or not, we don't actually need to read your messages to understand you. Happy's got a behavioral assessment based on DISC. So when you first log into Happy, you spend about 5 minutes answering some questions. And then from them, we are looking at how you're using the platform, the type of coaching you're accessing, and we can kind of learn from that enough other behavioral cues to be able to render coaching to you.
Big fan of DISC. I think I already told you that. Our organization also big fan of DISC. And what I told you before we started recording, which I'll share with listeners as well, is like, DISC is great. Any assessment is great. It's good for self-awareness. It's awesome when you can bring your team together and say, like, what are you? What about? How do we can interact? But often in our daily interactions that are after that assessment takes place or after that team training, we're not effectively bringing that to every conversation. Explain how Happy takes that model and uses it into everyday interactions. How does it work?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing is that people have been taking personality tests, since the 1960s. And personality assessments are kind of like a religion, right? If you like Myers-Briggs or if you like DISC, or there's like so many different assessments out there, right? And it's like, the truth is that most assessments are 40-page PDFs and you read them and it's like useful. You get that kind of goat on the mountaintop moment where like, it's like, oh my gosh, like, this is really interesting. But then to your point, it's like, how do you actually apply that? And like, how do you apply it with your real coworkers or your boss or your CEO or your head of marketing? And like, how do you use that with Susie in accounting? Like, I have a little joke. There is no actually Susie in accounting. Well, I mean, Brandon, there's a Susie in accounting somewhere. She's probably really pissed because I've been talking about her a lot. But like, she rejects a lot of expense reports, right? In my world, because I like to talk about this. And like, when Susie rejects your expense report and you're like really frustrated with Susie because you like missed 1 decimal point on like one of like 30 different receipts from your trip, and she just stamps it, redo, and just sends the expense report back, right? And you're just like, Susie, at that moment, it's like, how do I communicate effectively with Susie? Like, I'm pissed, I'm frustrated. Susie's probably pissed because I'm a slob that apparently can't figure out how to do my expense report. But that's the kind of thing that how we bring an assessment to life is it just, instead of becoming this kind of abstract thing that is kind of cool and curious, but like it actually helps you with your actual real life at work with the actual people you work with. And like, that's really valuable, right? It's not just like, oh, I'm a purple dinosaur and you're a Cordy and I'm a, yellow dragon, with pink hooves. Like, it's like, okay.
Much deeper than that. You told me that you started building this company in 2020. What was the why behind it at the time? And maybe something to do with the pandemic and the fact that most companies went remote. Maybe it was something you were even thinking about well before that, but curious what problems you were trying to solve then.
Yeah, I mean, it actually went back to probably 2011, 2013, somewhere in there. I got my first executive coach. I've been a CEO since my mid-20s, so I've been a CEO for 20 years. And I got an executive coach by the name of John Delmatoff, and John was really a huge part of my life. And the value of having an executive coach was just amazing. And getting access to a coach as a young CEO, I found it incredibly valuable. And John was actually the first one that taught me how to use a personality assessment. But what John really taught me to do was to better understand my coworkers and to build even a shred of listening capability and like learning how to listen to people more effectively. But what I realized in working with John was taking that very valuable coaching and trying to distill that to the entire organization, Brandon, was incredibly hard. It's like, okay, what John has taught me is fantastic, but how do I teach the whole rest of my company how to become emotionally intelligent? How do I teach them to become better people leaders? And it was really hard. And so even back then, it was like very early on, I recognized like, this is hard stuff. Like, and I only had maybe say 80 to 125 employees at the time. So how do you do that when you have 500 employees? How do you do it when you have 1,000? So scaling like that type of coaching is really hard. And so my co-founder and I back in 2018, 2019 had developed this idea of using AI and using behavioral science to do this at scale and to do it in a way that was really easy for the employee. And so, the rest is history. So, I mean, that's really where the idea came from. But I'll tell you, the one thing is the pandemic really changed that. So if you were a CEO or if you were an individual contributor and you were used to coming into the office, now you're in this whole new world of hybrid work and remote work. And, maybe if you and I were working together, like, hey, we got to go have a beer and a taco together on Tuesday. And, we got to spend that organic time together and build our relationship. Well, that was gone. And so I didn't even get a chance to learn you, because the only time I learn you is when we're in a meeting or on a Zoom call. So that's where for Megan and I, my co-founder, it was like, okay, it was really time to launch Happy, because we just felt like, there was a lot of organizations that, needed to learn how to work together, frankly.
It's absolutely true. I mean, pre-pandemic, I would have loved to get some beers and tacos with you. I mean, like I was doing happy hours and lunches all the time, and now it's more transactional, I think. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Is like they may be working at home or in a hybrid situation, and they're glued to these tools. And the only time they interact with colleagues is on Teams, on Slack, on Zoom. And so I like that you're thinking that way, is to try to meet people where they're at, especially if they're not doing the other things to get to know a person at a deeper level. The how behind this technology, like let's let people in a little bit on how it works. So it integrates into some of these tools that we use. So it meets us where we're at. What else could we expect from it?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing is that I like talking about the manager-employee relationship, because that relationship is the core of what I call organizational DNA or organizational culture. I don't care how much you align with the company's mission. If your manager is an a-hole, it's really hard to be happy. It's really hard to want to stay in the organization in the long run. And so there's really nothing more important than improving the manager-employee relationship. I would say right behind that is like workload and work-life balance. And those are also factors of a positive relationship with your manager. And so in my opinion, the data is pretty clear that that is the most important relationship at work. We start with, how do we improve that? And I'm going to take this back to something just incredibly simple. Happy helps you learn your manager. That's job one for us, is how do we provide insights into how your manager thinks, what's important to your manager. And so with Happy, there is a behavioral science component to it, but you can actually go in and you can actually tell your own story at work. So there's a section where like you can write all about Brandon and you can talk about what Brandon likes and what Brandon doesn't like. And so it gives you a voice. And so you get to see the science, and then you also get to see Brandon kind of like, if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can share your story. And so that's really valuable, because especially for me, I know that when I can understand what's important to my boss, what he or she is thinking, how you tend to look at work, how you tend to think, how you tend to behave at work. And then I can get actual like useful tips every day on how to improve my relationship with you. And I know that my boss is also getting some like insights on me, and I can look at my coworkers. And if let's say, Brandon, I've never met with you before and I'm working at your company and I've got to go into my first meeting with you, I'm going to be like pretty nervous about that. So, I mean, really that's the underlying concept behind Happy, is like, what can we give to the employee to get them so that they can get to know you a little bit and they can understand how you might run a meeting, or what's important to you in a meeting setting, or doing an employee review, or resolving, pitching an idea. So these are all things that Happy kind of helps with every day.
I think most companies struggle with the onboarding experience. And I imagine a tool like this would be really effective at ramping up people when they're newly hired, trying to get to know people, fit into the mold. I'm sure with the first 90 days are a very different experience with having a tool like this at their disposal.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of that, or any stories that of people who
Yeah.
are new hires? Yeah, I would love to hear it.
I mean, you could put on, like, for example, from your college days, you could put your keg stand videos up in your About Us section if you wanted to.
Yeah. Okay.
Just saying, just throwing that out as an idea. No, I mean, it depends on, I would say, organizations use Happy differently. And so, some of our clients are integrating it in the onboarding process very early on. Some of them have a pretty advanced onboarding process. And so I think part of it just depends on how you want to use a tool like this as part of your daily life. We are continuing to build the capabilities of Happy out every week or two. We're releasing new features. And so, we're anticipating, we want to be part of the entire employee experience. And so we think that from onboarding to even exit interviews, really being able to help you understand how to work better with your coworkers, how to communicate more effectively. People's frustration, if you actually look at the data, the number one reason people report frustration with their managers, they say, my manager doesn't understand me.
Yeah, I believe that. Does it work both ways though? Like, so managers getting tips just as much as the employees getting tips to know more about their manager? Like,
yeah, so it's not just your manager. Yeah, so the way it works is that you can do it one of two ways. So the software does it for you. So the software knows who you work with every day just based on our social connectivity algorithms. So we're looking at, like, who are you meeting with, who's getting coaching on you, who are you sending messages to? We're not reading your messages, but we know who you're interacting with. And then we can profile your coaching around that. So, which we do. But you can also build coaching circles inside Happy. And so you can just pick the people you want to get coaching on. So, like, Brandon, if you had like 6 direct reports, you can just go in and you just go, oh, these are the 6 people I want to get coaching on. And then maybe you pick, like, your boss, maybe you pick 2 other senior managers and the CEO, because your role, like, you interact with those people every day. So what we tell people is put 10 people in your coaching circle that, like, are pretty important that you work with. But then Happy might add or take people out that you're interacting with over time. So let's say, like, you hire a new executive assistant and, his name's Arnold, and you forget to add him to your coaching circle. In a couple weeks, you're probably going to start getting coaching on Arnold because it's going to know that you're working with Arnold. So it'll give you coaching on him even though you never signed up for him. But yeah, so it's bi-directional. It's not just your manager. It's just whoever. And then you can get coaching on people that you don't work with at all. Let's say you get put in a new cross-functional team like Brandon. I know you're big at planning the Christmas party every year. So if you're, planning the Christmas party and you're like, I need to figure out, like, damn, Nancy wants the roasted nuts and I need to tell her that's a bad idea and I need a couple tips, you can look Nancy up if you want to.
So this tool is helping us with our daily interactions with people. Does it ever, I know it's not like reading the messages or listening into our meetings, but do you have another phase of this where it will, and it'll even provide you with tips on tone of voice or how much you talk or various competencies that we have in our roles?
Yeah. And so that's already, so there's tools out there that do those kind of things now. Not exactly like what you're talking about, but like there's AI note takers that will say, hey, you're talking 40% of the time. And so our Microsoft Teams plugin does have coaching in Teams video calls. So you can get actionable coaching on how to communicate. So the question really becomes, this is not a technology question. The question becomes, how invasive is somebody willing to let a tool like this be and coach you? And so we're not really facing technology hurdles. We're facing more like privacy questions. And so one of the useful uses of this, for example, is you're about to send a boneheaded email to your boss. I don't know. What's your boss's name, Brandon?
Angela.
So we're about to send a poorly worded email to Angela because you're very frustrated about the planning of the Christmas party. And, we all wish that at some point somebody on our shoulder said, hey, Brandon, probably shouldn't hit send on that email because you used the word, you used aggressive language in the email, right? And so it's like, this wizard on your shoulder. And so, look, that's technology that we are evaluating and trying to figure out how much do we want to listen to what you're writing and doing. And I'm not sure what people's appetite are going to be. I have a feeling over time there's going to be more tolerance for opting into that type of thing, but I don't think it's ever going to be mandated. And so one of the policies we have at Happy is like, we're not going to opt you into that type of, if your organization doesn't want to permit it, obviously that's an organizational decision. But even when we do get some of our live chat products live, it's definitely going to be opt-in on an individual basis. And I'm going to really wonder about, like I said, I want to start I hope that you guys start using Happy, and then I'm going to monitor your company Christmas party Teams channel.
See how much conflict is involved in the planning of the party.
It's the little mini pizza bites versus the mini steak tacos, like the fierce debate there. We're ruffling feathers over that.
Those small interactions do matter. I've always said that. It's like these tiny little interactions, they snowball. And I know we're like tongue in cheek on this, but it is true. Like these interactions that we have with our colleagues and coworkers, whether it's a manager-employee relationship or in a group setting, planning the Christmas party, those have a ripple effect downstream. And I imagine that you looked at it hard and decided to build a tool that focuses on those interactions, because it probably downstream has a big effect on the culture and how you get things done. Maybe just talk to me a little bit about that, just the overall transformation you're aiming for in some of these companies using this tool.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong. All those things you identified, that's spot on. I mean, in terms of improving organizational culture, I think it would start with communication, collaboration. Probably a big one is conflict resolution. Hopefully not because of the company Christmas party, but you never know. But healthy conflict's important. Like the ability to have healthy conflict and how you navigate conflict, like that's a real thing. And I think sometimes, people want to avoid conflict, but instead of promoting a healthy organizational culture where conflict with your manager or with the decision maker, that's probably quite healthy. And so that's one of the things I'm proud to say I think Happy does a really good job of, is helps provide some perspective. You don't usually go to HR and say something about like this: wow, I'm having some light conflict with my manager and we're having a disagreement. Because people don't go to HR for those type of things. They go to HR when there's like a real problem. But to your point, big problems come from little problems, and giving you the tools to sort out what I would call a healthy conflict or a disagreement is like really important. I wish I could tell you how many thousands of positive comments we've gotten over the last few months from regular individual contributors when we're doing our training sessions that said like, I just need someone to help me like work with X person. They don't want to go to HR because this isn't like a burning fire. It's just like they're struggling to work with somebody, and the organization hasn't given them anybody to talk to. So it's like they either don't talk to anybody or they talk to their peer, which isn't great either because the peers doesn't have.
It's gossip.
Yeah.
At that point, when you start talking about other people behind their back, it's not. They're not processing a situation. They're probably spreading more harm than good. And to your point though, like especially when contributor level employee who's maybe having a disagreement with a colleague or a light conflict, having a tool like this, because my company's not necessarily providing me like some sort of a coach, that's expensive and you can't do it at scale, but a tool like this would allow you to lean into a conversation where otherwise you might not, because you've never processed it with somebody or you never got suggestions that might be tailored to that person.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I mean, that's the thing is I think what we're trying to do, right, is like, if you want to transform your workplace, like a big part of that is like, what do I do as an organizational leader to create these kind of conversations? Well, I think it just starts with this kind of very flawed assumption, which is, young managers, or maybe not the word young, but a new manager somehow knows how to manage people. I mean, most managers don't get any real training on how to manage people. And so you have a workforce typically that has a lot of managers that themselves are looking for training on how to work with their people. People want coaching. They just don't have their bosses don't have the bandwidth to coach them. So it's kind of like this organizational challenge that's existing where everybody wants some help on sorting through their work relationships, but they just don't have the time to get it or to give it.
Yeah. Could you see this? I don't know if you think this tool as it sits today could replace 360 reviews that many organizations do. Those are often subjective and not helpful, in my opinion. Could a tool like this eventually solve for the bias and subjectivity in performance reviews and 360 reviews?
It's an interesting question. I mean, there's so much research coming out right now about, the failure of reviews to actually provide actionable behavior change. And I was reading an article the other day, and it literally said, is no review better than bad reviews? And it's like,
I often think that myself. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know.
it's like, I don't, I like think about that for a little bit. I don't know, at the end of the day, I almost want to flip this around. I almost want to say that my hope is that tools like Happy become so good at improving your human relationships that you and your manager are able to have incredibly healthy dialogue that's like very nutritive to both of you. And so, the review process, it doesn't feel like something you have to dread once a year, because you kind of already, you're already having these high quality interactions now, like on a much more iterative basis. And so, you understand your manager, or you understand your coworker, your leadership team understands you. And so we're just living at a point where we just are able to be just more honest and open with each other just on a regular basis. And so I don't know that anything is ever going to replace the value of just maybe that kind of very high quality transparency, because in my opinion, it's like, I want my boss to see me for who I am and to understand what motivates me. And one of the things that I'm depending on my boss to do is to help me, not do it for me, but help me get in the right seat on the bus in my company. Right role, right fit, right skill set, right in line with my superpowers, right? Because that has to be, we have to do that together. And so I think it's going to be a big aid to that. But my hope is that, it's going to be a part of a set of tools that'll be available to kind of supplement and grow that relationship.
I love that.
I don't know. Was that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me think that, like, going back to the probably the first question I asked, or a comment you made about, if people are fearful and we're not sure if it's going to be replacing jobs at some point. I mean, I'm sure some will, like just with any economic development, jobs will be replaced and new ones will be created. But with a tool like this, you're really leaning into the human interaction. You're using this as a tool to help people get deeper in the relationships to get things done. And that seems very different than some of the other tools that are looking to automate and replace. It really feels different than some of the other things that I've run across in the AI space.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I think we have a lot of questions that are going to be resolved in the next 5 or 10 years about what is AI's role in the future of work. And, I use AI to help me every day. I kind of reference, help me be more creative, help me be more efficient. I think I see my kids more because I have AI, really. And those are important things, right? And I think nothing is going to replace the value of the human relationship. Like the relationship that you and I build together, that trust that we create together, because not that we're the same, but because we respect our differences, right? And then so my job with Happy is, how do I help create a tool with our team that helps you understand the people around you and their unique, skill sets? And then how can they better understand you? If you're somebody that appreciates data, that's really valuable for your team to learn, and not learn a year and a half after working with you. So if you're one of those people that like really appreciates analysis and data, we need to coach your team on that. That's how you look at the world, right? You're not being a pain in the ass asking for statistics or data. Like that's the lens that you look through the world. And by the same token, Happy has to also be able to say this to you. Hey, Angela is a big, I don't know if this is at all true about Angela, so apologies in advance.
She's amazing. I've worked with her for 15 years. Amazing.
So it might say something like, Angela's a big picture thinker. She loves bringing big, bold ideas. Brandon, before you shoot her ideas full of holes with asking for data and statistics, dream with her for a little bit.
Spot on.
I have no idea if any of this is true.
Hey, you're pretty darn close. Love it. Well, this has been a fun conversation. Like, if companies or people listening to this are like, I'm in on this and I want to explore, what's like the best approach to getting started with something of this nature?
Yeah, so you can go to happycompanies.com. And we have free plans available for teams. And you also can go to happyprofile.com, and you can actually get a free Happy Disc assessment, free Happy Profile just for you.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So we literally are launching this next week where we have free profiles for individuals. And so you probably can't go there this exact second, Brandon, but on Monday you can.
Right.
Yeah, we've had so many requests. I mean, it's been on a lot of podcasts, done a lot of media and given quite a few speeches about Happy. And everybody in the audience is like, I want to know what my Happy profile is. I want to get some coaching. And I'm like, well, you have to get your company to come to Happy and we need to do a program and blah, blah, blah. And now it's we decided to have a free level for individuals and small teams. So anybody can, yeah. And it's just giving back. We want people to learn, how do you learn yourself, right? Well, it starts by grabbing yourself a Happy profile and then you can get some free coaching.
Love it. Fun discussion, James. You're the co-founder, CEO of Happy. Thanks for coming on. Where can people connect with you personally, if that's okay?
LinkedIn.
That's the spot. All right. We'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes.
Love it.
My guest today has been James Lawrence, the co-founder and CEO of Happy. James, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Brandon.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.